All right. Well, it looks like we are live. I am so incredibly excited. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Come on in. I'm going to give everybody about 60 seconds to come on in to the conversation tonight because we're going to have a really awesome conversation tonight. Okay, so it looks like we are live. I'm really, really excited for this episode. This is an episode that came to me, oh my gosh, probably about 4 to 6 weeks ago. And I said, I'm going to kind of set this one to the side for just a second because I really need this to marinate because I really want to give some background and some context into how this episode even came about. And I'm really excited. And so, for those of you that are new to the Liberation Lounge, I want to say welcome. I am so incredibly excited to have you. And that goes for the ladies as well as our allied gentlemen and everybody in between. I really hope that this episode in particular blesses you. But the Liberation Lounge is where we have real talk with real women. And I'm going to get raw into a conversation tonight that I think is really essential for us to have. It's a conversation that, in hindsight, I wish was had with me when I was a young girl or as I was coming into my dating years. I wish this conversation happened. And I remember talking to my sister and my cousins about this after my divorce. And I said, man, there's conversations that women need to be having with each other that we're not having. So, whether that is with women within your own family, or you have an extended tribe, you've got your sister aunties and family friends, this is a conversation that I really wish someone had had with me very early on. And some of these things we learn by strict observation, which is fantastic, and other times we have to learn through experience. So we can learn through observation, we can learn from others, and we can learn from experience. But there's something very powerful about actually having the conversation with the women in your life, with the young girls in your life, with the girls that are coming into their dating years, with the girls that are considering marriage. There are conversations that we gotta be having. So if you have little sisters or little cousins that you're working to mentor and to help them to develop into the women that they need to be sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel because this episode will be archived there. And I want to be sure that this is a conversation that we are having more frequently amongst us queens. Okay, so if you're watching us live, put live in the comments. If you're watching us on replay, put replay in the comments. But I really want to talk today about being unmarried, unapologetic, and unstoppable. Unmarried, unapologetic, and unstoppable. Okay, what does life look like after marriage? And what can it look like if you've never been married? So I want to rewind the tape a little bit and just give a little bit of context. I'm 46 years old. I'm not married and I don't have kids. I may not get married again. That's really up to the God that I serve, and if it makes sense for my future, I'll do it. If it doesn't, then I won't. It's real simple. But let's rewind the tape a little bit. I remember living in the city of Chicago, and I was a woman that was in her 20s at the time. And I was kind of doing my corporate thing, working in the advertising industry. And I remember the day when I realized that a lot of my friends, especially my friends from back home in Cincinnati, were getting married, they were having kids, and not so much in Chicago, which was kind of interesting, but a lot of my friends back home in Ohio were getting married and they were starting to have children. And I remember when my college roommate had come to Chicago because she was getting ready to get married, and we had like a sister girl Chicago weekend, kind of like sister girl, just the two of us, bachelorette weekend before she got married, right? And we partied our butts off. It was amazing. But all this was happening in my life. Again, pretty much mostly all my friends from back in Ohio. And I remember having the conversation with my mom one day. And for those of you who don't know the background of my family, so I come from the youngest of seven children. My mom raised most of us, at least my most of my last like three or four siblings. She raised us solo. Okay, after she left my dad. And I remember calling my mom one day and I said, Mom, seems like all my friends are getting married and I just don't know. Blah, 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 blah. And I never forgot the wisdom that came out of her mouth because I was talking to her specifically that a lot of my friends were starting to have kids. And she said, April, just because you can procreate doesn't mean that you should. Just because you can procreate doesn't mean that you should. Now, this is coming from a woman that popped out seven babies, and I was her youngest. And I thought that was a very wise thing to say, coming from a mother to her youngest daughter. Just because you can procreate doesn't mean that you should. Because I was starting to feel some like weird pressure, right? Not from family or even from friends, but it was really more cultural and societal, right? And I'm gonna talk more about that here in just a moment. But I decided at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm free. She freed me. Now that was one of the conversations that we did have, which I was grateful for. Okay. So we had the kid conversation. So I never really felt pressure. I'm grateful that I grew up in a family where I didn't really feel pressure that I needed to have kids, right? My sister, I always say she took care of that for all of us. She had five, right? So my mom had her grandkids, and my older brother had a couple kids, and so my mom got her grandkids. So there really wasn't pressure on really any of us, to be honest, to get married and to have kids. It's just not the that was not a part of the conversation or a part of the culture. Okay. So I'm gonna get to that in just a moment. And so I appreciated that conversation about just because you can procreate doesn't mean that you should. That's one of the conversations that I believe we need to be having with our younger sisters. Now, there's another conversation, though, that didn't happen. And the conversation that didn't happen had to do with context around marriage. I don't think that this is new news to anyone, that we live in a very patriarchal society. And I'm going to speak to Western civilization because it's not like that in some other nations. But here in Western civilization, I'm talking US, Canada, Europe, right? Even in many parts of South America, it's a patriarchal society and very hierarchical. So you have patriarchy and hierarchy within that, right? And so what my mom or just the women in my family, the conversation we never really had was about not only just because you can procreate doesn't mean that you should, but you're going to have to decide if marriage is the right thing for you. And if it is the right thing for you, here's what to look for. Here's what to look out for. Here's what to look for. I love what my one friend Maria said. We were doing a podcast together, which is really awesome. And she said something. It's like, when people say things and they just like stick to your brain, like you'll never forget it. And she said, it's the green flags that you never knew you needed. And I was like, oh, yes, that's it. So those green flags are the what to look for. And then you have the red flags, which are what to look out for. I didn't have that conversation with any woman in my family. No man in my family. Honestly, out of all my seven siblings, only three of us ever got married. Yeah, three. My sister, one brother, and me. So this was not a part of our familial conversation. Just wasn't. There were other priorities that we had as a family. This was not one of them. So as I began in my dating life, I didn't have context. Honestly, I didn't have context of what to look for and what to look out fors were. Just didn't really have context. What I did have was a lot of other influences. I did have that. And these influences came largely from society, right? Just societal norms and the business or professional context that I was in. So we hear often this thing called the power couple, right? We've all heard of that, the power couple. And I think I drank the power couple Kool-Aid for a long time, right? It was like, oh yeah, the J and the Bay of this and that, right? And without having that other context of what to look for, what not to look for, you can be drinking Kool-Aid that is laced with poison without even knowing it. So, I've taken the last 2 years since I filed for divorce to kind of reflect, right? And I'm putting a lot of this in a book. So just give me time on that, y'all. I got a lot of other things happening right now, but it's coming out. By the way, it's called Deliciously Free. Okay. So I didn't have that context, right? In order to see that this Kool-Aid that I was drinking was laced with poison. I didn't know what the look fors and what the look out fors were. Just didn't have context, right? Aside of just sidebar conversations that you have with girlfriends and things like that. But these other influences really were strong, due in large part because of the incubator that I was in regards to the business that I was in with my ex. So, and I do want to say this up front that this is not about bashing men or marriage. I am pro marriage if it's right. Super pro marriage, right? People that are married, amazing. You've been married for a day, or you've been married for 1,000 days. I applaud that because it's hard, right? But it's this episode in particular is about what emerges when a woman really kind of rediscovers in many ways, or discovers for the first time, who she is outside of the context of the man. That's what this is about. This is not anti-men. This is not anti-marriage. It's about the woman rediscovering or discovering for the first time who she is outside of the role with a man. That's what this is about. Okay, so I just want to be ultra clear so I don't have some guys in the chat that are like, oh, she's male bashing. No, dude, love men, always have, always will. Okay, so it's not really about being anti-marriage. It's about being pro-you. That's what it's about. It's not anti-marriage. It's about being pro-you. So, for those of you who don't follow me on LinkedIn, I launched a newsletter a couple months ago called Operation Liberation. And it came to me for a very specific reason. I read this book right here. The Next Day by Melinda French Gates. I read it when I was on my way to New Orleans with my amazing guy, my amazing man. Okay, April's got a man. But I read it on my way to New Orleans, and it was awesome. And the reason why I picked up the book is because I had seen Melinda French Gates on a podcast with Jay Shetty, and I was blown away. Now, I had known of Melinda French Gates, right? I knew that it was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all the philanthropic work that they've done over the years. And I was familiar with her. I actually read her first book, which was about women, because she has a very strong emphasis in terms of where she has put her energy on women. But this podcast was special. And if you guys have not seen it, just go to YouTube and put in Melinda French Gates, Jay Shetty, and it will pull up. Okay. Jay Shetty's podcast where he's interviewing her. And there was this really beautiful authenticity, very calm, peaceful, powerful, poignant woman sitting across from Jay, who was vulnerable yet secure. And it mesmerized me because I was like, I am her and she is me. Vulnerable yet incredibly secure. And it was so beautiful to watch. Vulnerable because she was very open about the pain that she had experienced going through the divorce from Bill Gates, billionaire, right? And she said, it was the hardest time of my life. Days I couldn't get out of bed. This is the man I've been with for however long, 25 years. Children with them. And in the book, the next day, she goes into some detail about how she had to have the conversation with Bill to let him know, I think this is over. And they had gone on a trip to, I think, Sedona in Arizona. And over dinner, she broke the news and said, this isn't working. That is one of the hardest conversations any woman ever has to have. And I remember when I had the conversation at the kitchen table. And I remember saying, this isn't working. We have been trying to make it work for 8 years. And to live that long unfulfilled is a long time. It's a long time, 8 years. And when I finished reading Melinda French Gates' book, because I resonated so intimately with her story and because I had seen her on the podcast, I started like borderline stalking her online. Like, is she speaking anywhere? Where's she at? This is my sister right here. But the vulnerability was there in that podcast. But then there was the power and the poise and the decisions that she was empowered to make now that her life was not in the context with the man named Bill. And she said things that I'm not sure if she would have felt free to say or express or even do. Because speaking from experience, and this is all societal structure, y'all. This is not like an April thing. Any of y'all listening right now will know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? In Western civilization, when a woman is married to a man, okay, there is this assumption almost like that everything that she does is a reflection of him. Everything that he does may or may not be a reflection of her. So there are these pressures to kind of conform to this box. And it's the box of what society says a woman is meant to do, even put up with. Yeah, that's safe to say. And speaking to that, my dear family friend, her name is, well, actually, I'm gonna leave her nameless. Okay. But she was real close to my mom. Okay. And she sent me something today. It's really powerful. And it said, the reason your grandmother didn't leave your grandfather has less to do with some moral compass or love than you think. Until 1964, an employer could refuse to hire you because you were a woman. Until 1974, refusing to sell a woman a home was legal. I think in the same decade, a woman couldn't even have a credit card. This is in my lifetime, y'all. I'm a Gen Xer. And until 1988, you could refuse to rent to a woman with children. Contrary to what people believe, women didn't stay because relationships were better. They stayed because society wasn't designed for their independence. So some of you may be familiar with the 4B movement. And I'm not even going to get into that because that's a whole rabbit hole. Just Google it. 4B movement, Korea. Just Google it. But society was not designed for a woman's independence. In many ways, it still isn't because we have an administration that's thinking about paying people to have kids. Another rabbit hole I'm not going to go down, but you see where I'm going with this, right? So we have, those of us, again, I'm speaking of Western civilization, have grown up primarily in this paradigm of woman being defined through the man, right? And what I learned through Melinda French Gates' story, and again, I really encourage you to check out her podcast with Jay Shetty, is she has found her voice in a way that I don't know if she ever has found it. I don't know if she ever would have found it if she would have continued to be married to Bill. Because anything that she says and anything that she does is a reflection of him. And Melinda French Gates is not the only one. Michelle Obama has talked about it very openly. The freedom and her ability to flex now that she never felt that she really could do, being the first lady of the United States. So you have these women, and I can give you a ton of examples. I got a great girlfriend, lives about 30 minutes from me. And I remember when we were having this conversation, she had gone through a divorce. She hence has been remarried for like 8 to 10 years. Um, Great man, right? Again, pro marriage as long as it's right. And I remember having a conversation with her after my divorce, and she said, I don't know if I would have gone back and got my PhD in my 50s if I would have been married to my ex. Probably wouldn't have. PhD in her 50s. For all of you who think it's over at 50. I have another girlfriend right now who is turning 50, who's doing a 40-day sabbatical around the world by her damn self. Some of you know her. She's got great content on Instagram right now and TikTok. But I'm giving you these examples. My own mother didn't purchase her first home after she divorced my dad. She did not purchase her first home until she was in her late 50s, maybe almost 60. So I think it's important that we understand the liberation that can come to a woman and what she can really experience when she walks in her independence. And guess what? She can walk in her independence single, dating, or married or partnered. And my calling is to inspire women to do so. That's why I'm the liberation queen. So let's get into some more stuff here. Let me revert back to Operation Liberation on LinkedIn. When I read Melinda French Gates' book, I said, I got to start featuring some of these women. Now, most people know who Melinda Gates is, but now she's Melinda French Gates. And in the podcast that I was referencing earlier with Jay Shetty, she discusses very eloquently some very important things. And Jay Shetty asked her a question, and the question was, Melinda, if there was one thing that you could say that you could do to change the world, or that would change the world, what would that thing be? Obviously, she's got a lot of power, she's got a lot of money, and a lot of influence. And she said, what would change the world is that every woman and every person of color could genuinely feel that they had a seat at the table. That's what would change the world. And then he asked her a similar question to that, and her answer was, I think it was like her dream. What would be her dream? And she answered it by saying that standing next to every powerful man in every room is a woman. That's a really good next step. So, those are a few things to chew on. But her focus has been on putting her money towards nonprofits and businesses that support women and marginalized communities, primarily Black and Brown women. And MacKenzie Scott's done the same thing. MacKenzie Scott is Jeff Bezos' ex-wife. As of, I think, late 2024, no, early 2024, she had already donated 19 billion with a B dollars, $19 billion. She had already fundraised and gave. Now, I know there's some of you who are like, oh, well, they get the tax breaks, blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, they do. But would you rather them not do it? She gave like $20 million to Tuskegee University. They said this is transformative money. Transformative, the president of the university said. She didn't have to do that. She gave like 40 million to Howard. She didn't have to do that. So let's talk about the past. So, when you go through a divorce, uh, there's sadness, pain, in many cases, some anger, blah, 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 blah. Once you go through therapy, you should do therapy and get through all of that, right? Resentment, all that stuff. Then you settle into a place of freedom. It's a really powerful place to be. I remember when I moved out. I remember the exact day. I left. It was May 17th, 2023. I'll never forget it. When I moved out and I went and stayed at my mother's home that my brother was living in, um, and I stayed there for about 3 months. And I remember when I moved into my new apartment, which is where I am right now. And I remember I was like, it was the first place I looked at. I was like, this is it. I want it. I'll give you first month's rent and deposit right now. I'll Venmo you right now. And I remember my first night here, and I felt a level of peace that I had never felt in my entire marriage. And after I divorced, I remember a couple conversations I had with girlfriends. It was like three different girlfriends, maybe four, but definitely three. I think one of them was a guy friend of mine. And you know what all three said? This is really fascinating. And this is the reason why I said about the conversation that we're not having. That's why I'm saying this. All of my girlfriends are not surprised. I mean, a little like, really? But then, like, not surprised. You know what they all said? They said, April, I remember the first time I met you. I had met you in your first year of marriage. I made a lot of friends in that first year that I was married. And they all said, I remember I met you in the first year of your marriage. And when I asked you, so how's it going? And I remember your response was, we'll see. And when they said it, I remembered saying it because I was very unsure. I was unsure. But you don't get married to get divorced. I had no intentions of getting a divorce. I was in it to win it. I mean, I stuck it out for 8 years, right? But in that, over time, I realized how much of myself I had lost. Lost a lot of myself. I also realized that I didn't really understand boundaries until about a year and a half after my divorce. Never understood them. Didn't even really have them. It was like anything my company wanted me to do, I did it. Anything my team needed me to do, I did it. Anything my market needed me to do, I did it. Anything my mom needed, I did it. Anything that he needed, I did it. Even if it hurt, I did it. No boundaries until I was 45. You know what's interesting? Attended a networking event of a long. I've known her forever, like probably over 10 years. She had a gathering at her home recently, and there was a woman who was probably 10, 12 years older than me, and we were having conversations around careers, and because our friend is writing a book about women and their careers. So she had brought this group of women together to talk about our career paths and pros and the cons and the things that we've experienced and what do we wish we could have done differently, what are we doing now, how have our careers evolved. And this woman, who's a very successful real estate agent and does a lot of other things, been in TV many years, she went back to school, like in her 40s, right? Reinvention after divorce. And she said, I didn't understand boundaries until like last year. I was like, okay, I don't feel that bad now. Then it took me till I was 46 to figure it out. 45 to figure it out. Took her into her 50s. Why? Because we're not having conversations. We're allowing society, cultural norms to dictate how we show up and how we behave in all of these contexts with friends, with family, with our bosses, our colleagues, our coworkers, our business associates. We're allowing cultural Western civilization norms to dictate all of that if we don't have the conversation. I read another book. I haven't talked about it I don't think, on any podcast yet, but I've had conversations with a few very close, dear friends of mine about it. I began to investigate this. Like, why do we keep ourselves so constricted until we're in our 40s and in our 50s? And then we have this like wake up call of like, what have I been doing all this time? I'm like, where is this coming from? Been on this like just 18 months just discovery. Like, what is happening here? Because as I began having more conversations with women, I realized I wasn't the only one. I realized I wasn't the only one. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. This is not just an April Joy thing. And so I started researching books like, okay, like what's going on with like women, how we lead, how we show up. What is up with us not finding boundaries till we're in our 40s and 50s? By the way, the women of this generation, millennial, y'all are different. I high five y'all all day because the women that were at my friend's gathering at her home, she had millennials, Gen Zers, Gen Xers, and she had um, boomers there. So it was awesome group of women. And it was evident that the women that were in their 20s and early 30s, they were learning boundaries earlier, setting them earlier in relationships with their bosses. Like, oh no, you ain't gonna have me working 16 hours a day. Uh-uh. Now I'll burn the oil a few nights a week, but I'm not doing that 7 days a week. I remember one conversation that a younger woman had with her team or her boss, and she was getting the impression that because she didn't have children, that it was okay for her to stay late at work, but the people who had kids, they were out. So the expectation was, well, you don't have kids, so you can stay. Hold up, wait a minute. And I'm not going to get into a conversation that I had a very similar experience. I'm just going to say that. I had a similar experience with my former organization. He's got kids. Okay. What does that have to do with anything? So, understanding this context, right? Boundaries. Didn't understand that. So I started investigating, why are we not getting this until we're much older? And I started doing some research, different books and stuff online, and I came across this book called Women's Ways of Leading, Revisited, just published, I think January 2025. Read the book. I was able to get in touch with one of the authors, and I was mesmerized by the book. I read it when I was in Costa Rica around my birthday, and I read it cover to cover, tears just streaming down my face because she was talking to me and the journey that I had gone through of leadership. And I realized that, man, women lead different. And how we should be taught leadership is different. It is not patriarchal. It is not hierarchical. It is flat. And if women can begin to awaken to that at a younger age, boy, you're talking about a tremendous revolution in the ways that women will be leading in this world in all sectors: political, business, education, just all across the board. It's a game changer if we can begin to start having this conversation. So when we think about the past, it's not about hating it, it's healing through it and appreciating what it actually taught you. Appreciating the lessons that were learned. Because I got to tell you, if I wouldn't have been through what I went through over the last 8 years, there's no way, I don't think, that I would really appreciate what I got right now. So everything has meaning and everything has purpose, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing. So first thing is you don't have to hate the past, you can heal through it. Second point, you know, freedom doesn't always have to be loud. It can be very kind of quiet, internal. Everyone is going to go through their process differently. Um, so you can really decide to choose peace, joy in your own preference and what that looks like. That might be, you know what? I never ever used to do yoga in the park. I never did yoga in the park. Why? Because I lived in the suburbs and I always wanted to live in the city. If I was going to live in Cincinnati, I wanted to live in the city. I didn't want to live in the suburbs. So guess what I do now? Yoga in Washington Park on Wednesdays. So it can be something as simple as that. There's a hobby that you never explored. There's a degree, like my good girlfriend who went back to school and got her PhD in her 50s. It could be starting that nonprofit. It could be taking the dance class. It could be doing the 40 days sabbatical. Save up a month and a half of expenses. Bite the bullet for a year if you have to so that you can do it. But I'm so grateful that I'm surrounded by these types of women. Again, my one girlfriend who got her PhD in her 50s, who I've known forever, like almost 18 years now, got remarried. Beautiful marriage, right? My other girlfriend on her sabbatical, been single for a while. Was married, now not. Been single for a while. So you get to decide what that looks like. What is the thing that either A, just didn't make sense while you were married because maybe you were the primary caregiver of the children, but now your kids are older, you're divorced, or maybe just not in a relationship, maybe you never have been. But what are the things that you can invest in? Because again, this is not about being anti-marriage, it's about being pro you. So even if you're married, you can still be pro you. I want to get that through. Even if you are married, you can be pro you. You can. You can be pro the marriage, but you can be pro you too. I can't tell you how many conversations that I have had with this is like what I do. I have conversations like mano y mano. I have conversations with women about like, okay, so why have you never done that? Da 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 da. Right? And a lot of them, it's because they didn't understand boundaries, didn't have any, none, zero. Anything anybody asks them to do, you do it. Right? Most women go through a extensive people pleaser phase. And sometimes, depending upon the context or the person, we jump back into that role. because we have not yet learned how to not be. We can not be a people pleaser over here, but with this person, we're still a people pleaser. With this person, we still shrink back. In that context, I still shrink back. In that context, I still am too quiet. I don't speak up. Over here, I'm good, but over here, I'm not so good. And that's okay. That's a growth area there. Many of us, we jump between these in the book, she calls them perspectives. We jump between these perspectives depending on the context of the people that we're interacting with. But the key is that over time, you get to a state where you can be the full liberated you in all contexts, even if other people don't like it. Because you know what I have come to learn? There's a boundary that I didn't have with my own brother when it came to caregiving for my mom before she passed. Didn't have it. And I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from that experience with my sibling, a lot. And I realized he had boundaries, firm, and I had zero. And I allowed myself to be bullied for like 4 years, totally bullied. And not until my divorce and when my mom passed did I really begin to understand this concept of boundaries. Because my no ends with a period now, with no explanation needed. And I really hope all the ladies are hearing this right now. Your no requires no explanation. Well, I can't because, oh, well, that doesn't really work for me. I've got to, all that extra, all the like stuff that comes after the dot, dot, dot. There is no dot, dot, dot. There's one dot. No, that just doesn't work for me. Maybe another time though. And you don't have to even give a reason, y'all. I got to pick up the kids. I got to admit. You need to throw all that out the window. Okay. Number 3. When one role ends, that's where a new identity begins. I can honestly say I don't feel like I really understood who I was as a woman until after I got divorced. I can honestly say that. Don't think I really understood. I had glimpses of it, but didn't really feel the freedom of it or experience the freedom of it until after I ended my marriage. Really didn't. So oftentimes it's a discovery of what you're really capable of. I was watching a quick clip of a podcast with Ryan Holiday, who wrote a lot of amazing books. He's got a great masterclass for those of you who subscribe to masterclass. And he said, um, every day it's important to do one hard thing, because discipline is what really creates success. So he was talking about discipline, right, on Diary of a CEO. And I realized after my divorce that there were things that I was doing that really were not conducive for me, but I did them for the sake of saving face. Right? Didn't really make sense for me, but I did it for the sake of saving face. And I think Melinda French Gates found herself in this place. MacKenzie Scott found herself in this place, because there's certain things that you just know you have to always like consider. It's like, okay, well, don't know if I can really do this because you got again. It's like, oh, well, how's this going to look on us or him? Right. And so when that's gone, there's this like effervescence that just begins to happen. And I don't know if either of those women that I was just talking about, Melinda French Gates or MacKenzie Scott, I don't know if either of them would be going down the paths as aggressively as they are right now if they were married. MacKenzie Scott, ex Jeff Bezos, that's why she said, I'm giving it away until the coffers are empty, right? And so I don't know. I don't know. Again, they're not together, so I can't say, but I would venture to say, I don't know if she would be that bold about who she's even given to. I went onto her foundation's website and it's like thousands of organizations, many, some right here in my backyard in Cincinnati and Cleveland. She gave like millions of dollars to United Way of Greater Cincinnati. Millions of dollars. She gave away like $10 million to maybe more than that. I can't remember the number, millions of dollars to this birthing organization right here in Ohio that supports maternity health in Black women. Like, right? A lot of her stuff goes towards women, marginalized communities, a lot of it, LGBTQ as well. And I was just like, wow, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know if she would be that bold, right? If she were still with Jeff Bezos. Why? Because he's kind of in an interesting camp right now. He's in this camp, clearly. We saw that at inauguration. And she's in this camp over here. So those two camps don't really gel, right? They just don't gel. So, and I loved her statement in her divorce. She said, "You know what? I'm giving up 100% of my stake in the Washington Post because, Jeff had purchased that. I'm giving up 100% of my stock in that. I'm giving up this, I'm giving up this." I mean, she was just like, "Hey, you know, because I think there was a part of her that was like, if I'm too tied to some of this, what is that going to mean?" Now, I don't know because I haven't read that, but maybe that was a part of her thinking. It's like, who do I want to be as MacKenzie Scott, not with Jeff? What do I have the ability to say and do now, not with Jeff? She can do whatever the hell she wants because she doesn't have to consider how this is going to impact the picture. Ding. I did it well for a long time. Number 4, liberation looks different for every woman. Some women, oh gosh, I can't think of her name right now. Maybe I'll drop her name in the comments when we're done here. But there's a woman that I started following who she's all about celibacy. I think I found her on TikTok. And she's all about celibacy, right? Um, and that's kind of just, again, if you're going to research the 4B movement in Korea, which is kind of spreading even beyond Korea now. But that's not just in Korea. I have had conversations with white, and they just were, just for context, white women here in the US, in Ohio, younger too, like in their 20s, that have said, I don't know what's going on with men in my generation. It's almost like, and I quote, it's almost like they have taken on the ideals of their grandfathers, not even their fathers. Interesting comments. And they're like, I think I'm good on dating right now because this generation is like back in the 30s or something. It's really fascinating what's happening right now with young men. Okay. But it might be celibacy, it might be the opposite too. maybe it's a rediscovery of her sensuality. Okay. So I'm not pro or con either. I'm just giving you context. Again, because I have a lot of conversations with women. So it might be celibacy. It's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm good right now. And I know a lot of women who have gone that path. And then I know others who are like, I was so not pleased for so long. I'm going to get some pleasure now. Whatever floats your boat, right? But it can look in a lot of different ways, right? So it might be celibacy, it might be greater sensuality. I will say this, and I have said this before, but it's worth repeating. When a woman doesn't really understand boundaries, she does a lot of things she doesn't want to do. I'm going to cut the tape right there, okay? Because I want to be respectful of my ex. But she does a lot of things she doesn't want to do. Perhaps puts up with a lot of things that she doesn't want to put up with. But what I can say is that when I got divorced, for the first time, I was in my body. And some of you that are a little more probably empathic or picking up on what I'm saying. Oftentimes in life, as a woman, again, context, Western civilization, your body is here, your mind is over here. Okay? Body here, mind somewhere over here. For the first time, it was like my body and my mind like came together. I was in my body, meaning I could be present in my body in all circumstances. And that's powerful. To be in your body. Do some of y'all know what I'm talking about when I say in your body? If you know what I'm talking about, put I hear you in the comments. And I'm gonna give you a really it's a tough example, but let me just give it to you, okay? Because this is gonna bring it home for some of you who are like, what is she talking about in her body? All right. So let's just say, unfortunately, a woman is raped, which is a loss of a boundary, right? There is something that can happen. And there's a great book about this called The Body Keeps the Score, where you are no longer in your body, right? Even if she was with her partner or significant other or husband, that trauma can often trigger a disconnect from the body. And I don't think this is just women, this can happen with men too, right? There's a disconnect that can happen where she's no longer, and I'm just going to speak to she right now because this is the Liberation Lounge where we have real talk with real women. But if a woman was raped, she can create, there's like an energetic disconnect that can happen. And I don't think this happens just with rape. This is just the example that I'm giving you. This could happen with molestation. This could happen not nothing really bad per se. It could be there's no emotional safety in that relationship. Whatever it is, there's a disconnect that can happen where now the body and the mind and emotions cannot sync up together. And what that then means is that, let's just say she is married or she's with her significant other, her partner. She could be being intimate and not even like there. still lubricating. I know I'm going deep on this, y'all, but this is important stuff. I don't have the book right here. It's in my other room, but there's a great book on this called Come As You Are, COME. Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. Y'all got to get this book. She's got a TED Talk on it. Go to YouTube, put Emily Nagoski, Come As You Are. Or you can just put Emily Nagoski. I think it's Nagoski. And she's like a sex health therapist. And this is this is so good. I got to give this to you guys. She talks about in her TED Talk how she is called in to court cases where a woman has been raped. And she is brought in as the sex expert to testify on why the woman was wet. Because the man would say, I didn't rape her. She was wet. What do you mean she didn't enjoy it? She wanted it. She was wet. And Emily, through science, proves that that is a biological response. It does not equate to consent. Biology over here. Consent is something different, right? Because she goes on in the book and in the TED Talk, and she says, "Look, a woman could be like, oh, I really want to be with you. Head is there, but body has not caught up to where the mind is yet." So there are these interesting things that can happen when there is no emotional safety. There's been a violation. There has been, or it's just a bad connection. Y'all just can't get synced up, right? By the way, did I say this was real talk with real women? So some of you are like, oh my gosh. Yep, I'm going there tonight. Okay. But it's true. So when my body finally synced up, where I was like, oh my gosh, I am in my body. This is amazing. And boy, when that happened, it was on. And I was like, this is what I never had. And this is what I'm never willing to sacrifice. Ever. Ever. It's not being in my body. I'm going to be in my body. All right. Last point. So my mom's family friend who texted me today. My mom, after she left my dad, she had dated maybe 2 or 3 guys after that. Nothing like super serious. No one ever lived in the house. There were no live-in boyfriends ever. Okay. And my mom lived a single life from there on out, right? For the next, what, 25, 30 years, something like that. And so liberation doesn't mean that you're alone. In my mom's circumstance, that is what it meant. After she left my dad, we were homeless for about 2 years. We couch surfed on different friends' couches, and some of them gave up their bed so we had a bed. Very grateful to those families who took us in when my mom left my dad. She was a single mom with 3 kids, nowhere to go. And she decided to stay single. So sometimes it may look like that. But then you have my other friend who got remarried, right? Found a great partner, has been married now for 8, 9, 10 years. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you're alone. It just means you're aligned because you know who you are, You understand boundaries. You are in your body. And you have peace. You're operating. Everything is like, and that might mean that you get remarried. That might mean that you just have a long-term partner. That just might mean that you casually date. That might mean that you live solo for the next 10 years and then you travel and you go to Nice, France, and you meet the person of your dreams, whatever that looks like. Okay? It's up to you. I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to give you context. So, after separation, I think what happens is a lot of women get really clear on like their energy, their boundaries. They get clear on their value system. My value system has completely changed since my divorce. Why? Because I got out of the bubble, the whole bubble, the business we were in bubble. I got out of the marriage bubble. I got out of the all the bubbles. I got out. I was like, I'm out. When you tap out, on that note, I'm out. Like Shark Tank. I'm out. And when I got out of all the bubbles, then I could get clear on what was most important for me. I was like, God, what are all the things that I did not do because I was in this meat grinder for so long? No blame. Choices. April choices. But now that I'm out of the meat grinder, I'm like, geez, what are all the things I put on hold? What were all the dreams? I'm like, man, I always wanted to live out internationally. I wanted to travel more, right? So I started doing some of that. And I'm like, this is really expensive. So what I do, I went and got a gig with the airline so I could travel more. Free. Not free, but it's close to free. Um, but I love it. I love it. Didn't know I would love it, but I love it because it's not as easy as I kind of thought it might be. It's actually kind of hard. I had to learn a lot. A lot. Still learning. Honestly, it's a lot. I got my PhD in aviation, I feel like. But yeah, it's like, man, I like being challenged differently. I love working with my coaching clients. I love working on a couple new podcasts that I'm working on. I'm enjoying writing my book. I'm enjoying the collaboration with an author. I love the journalism part of writing the Operation Liberation newsletter. I love adding value in this context, being in my body. I love it. So, there's a lot of women that have gone through this revolution. Tina Turner, I mentioned Tia Mowry, who I have just so enjoyed seeing her beautiful evolution, revolution, reinvention, self acceptance. Oh, can we talk about self acceptance? It's been beautiful to watch. So, I just want to encourage, women that it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s. Some women go through a divorce in their 20s. Some women say, well, I'm not getting married. I have a family member right now. She is, see, I'm 46. She's probably like 40. Beautiful, great career. She's like, I don't think I'm gonna do that marriage thing. I don't think I'm gonna do it. She had a couple long-term relationships. They didn't work out. She's like, I think I'm good on it. I'm good. I'm finding a lot more women going that route these days. It's very fascinating. But regardless of where you are, some women are like, oh no, I know I want to be married. I want to be married again. And then I have other girlfriends that are like, no, I'm good. I don't mind having a partner, but no, I don't think I'm gonna do the marriage thing, the formality of it. It's fine too. It's whatever works for you. But I'm really excited about what's next. Was this helpful? If this was helpful, can y'all drop me a love heart in the comments just so I know this conversation was helpful? Promise you, there's a woman in your life, in your social network who needs to hear this conversation. So I would encourage you to share this on your page. I would also encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel at April Joy Empowers on YouTube, because that's where all episodes of the Liberation Lounge are archived. But I do want to invite you to send me a DM. If you're watching this live on replay, let me know what you got out of it. And if you have a personal story that you'd love to share, I would love to hear it, because I am in the process of gathering some poignant testimonials for my book. You can remain anonymous, of course. Um, and I do have some upcoming things that I'm going to be launching, one of which I've been working on for about 4 months. And it's going to be pretty powerful. It's kind of related a little bit to this conversation. It's about really identifying the type of woman that you are, because we're not the same, right? Some of us are quiet giants. Some of us are bold. Some of us are visionaries. Some of us are soulful. Most of us are a little bit of all, right? But understanding what your kind of dominant type is going to be very powerful for many of you. So if you're interested in being a part of that, just drop a 1 in the comments and I'll be sure to be in touch with you here within the next probably 2-3 weeks max. Okay. Just about finished with that. So I hope this conversation was great for y'all. I hope you got something out of it. Please, please, please share, like, and subscribe to my YouTube channel at April Joy Empowers, where all Liberation Lounge episodes are archived. So I look forward to seeing y'all real soon. Love you. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much. Bye for now.